And this one is the next edition in the series of Kinfire games, and each of these games actually play very, very different from each other. We had Kinfire Chronicles and then Kinfire Delve, and now we have this one, which is a worker placement game where you're going to be placing your workers out on a city board, taking different actions, but then also trying to gain influence so that you can dictate the scoring conditions and the different opportunities that come up throughout the game. Something that's really cool about this game is that each player is going to be playing as their own asymmetrical council member with their own special ability, but you also have your own unique worker board, which is going to grant you with all sorts of different workers with their own specialties that might grant you different benefits or bonuses for using those workers in certain ways. And one thing I should probably say about this game is that this is the best image I could find of this game, which is just one that I pulled up from their Instagram. So most of the images I'm going to be going through here are from their designer diaries and things like that. So if you do want to see what this one's actually going to look like, you probably want to check out their Kickstarter. And also you'll probably want to check it out because this game looks like a ton of fun. It looks like a really solid design, and it is one of my picks of the week this week. And I say one of them because there's 25 games launching, and yeah, I can't just pick one. But the way this game actually works is that players are going to be competing to win the most favor within the city by placing their workers out on the various locations out on the city board and then taking the associated action with the goal to try and help the city as much as they can. And players are going to be gaining victory points based on their contributions. And something that's really neat about the way that the city board works is that all the different locations are actually going to be populated with different tokens representing the actions that you can take there, and these can be upgraded throughout the game. I'll come back to this in a minute here, but this can also be done on your own personal player board in order to change the way that your workers behave as you put them out and take the various actions. A couple other things to note is that there will be 2 decree cards drawn each round, with just one of those going into effect at the end of the round, and these can cause all sorts of effects and changes to the game, and players will be able to influence which one becomes active, and of course you're going to be trying to get the one that benefits you the most. But the other thing that you'll want to be aware of is that the players aren't the only ones trying to win the favor of the people, because there's also the neutral cultist faction. And every round you're going to be drawing 3 of these tokens, and they're going to have different numbers on them, and that's where they're going to be put out on the board, and they're going to be completely blocking those action locations. But also for each one of these that you draw, you're also going to be drawing one of the crisis cards and then putting it out on the crisis board. And I'll come back to this in a second here, but the more that the players let the cultists' efforts go unchecked, the more the cultists are going to be making progress towards winning the game. And if the cultists get the most favor of the people, then all the other players lose the game, unless you make the required efforts in order to gain control of the cultists. And if you do that and the cultists win, then you are going to be winning the game instead. This is a really neat mechanism where if a player thinks that the cultists might have a chance at winning, they might want to try and accelerate that effort, but then simultaneously try to gain control of that faction. But in order to do any of this, players are going to be taking turns assigning a worker from their own personal player board out to the various locations on the city board or onto those crisis cards. Some locations are specific to certain types of workers or grant bonuses to those workers, but the different actions that players can do is gain resources or money, arrest cultists, or remove them from the board, and you actually do get to keep the cultists as a resource for other actions. And the same thing does go for the crisis cards, so if you do have the resources to meet the requirements of that card, you can actually put your worker onto one of those cards as a worker placement action, and then that's going to be preventing that card's negative effects from coming into play, and you also get to take that card into your possession and use it as a resource for other actions in the game. But there's also actions that you can use to grow crops for the people, influence which of those decree cards might come into play, and also upgrade the individual worker locations themselves. And what's really nice about this is that not only does it improve the action of that location, but you also gain a benefit anytime another player uses that location afterwards. Like I said, there's also an action that allows you to upgrade the workers on your own personal player board, changing the benefit that you get for using them. And there's also various actions that can grant you special cards with some one-time use abilities. Each time you take an action, you also get to take a bonus action where you can spend resources in order to help build the lighthouse, which will grant you different bonuses and victory points throughout the game as well. Or instead, you could donate resources to help meet the needs of the people. This can also offer you some different benefits, especially depending on your special abilities, but this is normally going to be granting you some victory points. The round ends once all the workers have been placed, and then the rounds continue like this until the end of the game. And then at that point, the player with the most victory points wins the game, or if the cultists won, then either they win, or if one of the players was able to gain control of the cultists, then they would be the ones to win the game in that case. But if you are interested in this one, and it does look very interesting, definitely check it out, and you can find a link to it in the description below. And of course, you can click to get notified.